Hamas has released 3 Israeli hostages in the southern Gaza Strip, and Israel has released scores of Palestinian prisoners in the 4th round of exchanges of a ceasefire deal. Under the agreement, Hamas pledged to free at least 33 of the remaining hostages over the first 6 weeks in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinians jailed in Israel.
Israeli-American hostage Keith Siegel in the middle of a well-orchestrated Hamas ceremony in Gaza City. After around 500 days in captivity, the 65-year-old is finally handed over to the Red Cross team. In Israel, Keith's wife watched the ceremony live, relieved to see her husband free at last. In the southern city of Khan Yunis, Hamas militants released 54-year-old Ofer Calderon and 35-year-old Yardan Bibas, also in a highly performative ceremony. And a couple of hours later, Ofer finally sees his kids. And Yardan, his father and sister. The fate of his wife and 2 sons who were also abducted by Hamas is still not clear. People here in Tel Aviv celebrate the much-awaited release.
I can't even believe it. I honestly was trying to think the worst, especially like the soldiers that have come out, the women. I couldn't believe it. Like, we were just all braced for the worst, and that they're all coming out alive and, let's say, like with their limbs and relatively healthy is incredible.
Tear-filled reunions also in the occupied West Bank, where many gathered to meet the latest Palestinian prisoners released by Israel. The Israeli prison authorities said in a statement that all 183 Palestinian prisoners have been freed. Many were released to Gaza and others returned to their families in Israeli-occupied West Bank.
I am now joined by Sinijlawi, Palestinian activist and founding chairman of the Jerusalem Development Fund. He spent 5 years in an Israeli prison for violence he committed during the first Intifada. But for the last 30 years, he has been working to build bridges between Palestinians and Israelis. Welcome to DW News. More hostages and prisoners have been released today. Are you looking at these events with hope or concern?
Well, any positive step in the right direction brings hope. Let's see if it continues until the end. The tough parts of this ceasefire and exchange agreement is waiting for us ahead at the end of phase 1, where Israel will be obliged to start discussion of serious issues that are not related to the exchange. The exchange was simple, an equation of X number against X number, and with the presence of the Red Cross, the operation has been improving every time they are doing. But later Israel had to discuss the withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor, which means that, again, Gaza will be connected with Egypt without any presence of Israel. In a way or another, this is some kind of official withdrawal of Israel from Gaza Strip. And this might create a lot of challenges for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. At least Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, will challenge these decisions and will not accept to stay in the government. So the challenges are still there. Of course, we need to look and see what will happen in the coming days when Benjamin Netanyahu will visit President Trump in Washington, D.C., and we'll see if President Trump is really insisting into the continuation, because, we all know that it's because of his influence that this same agreement that was on the table from May during President Biden's time, it is the same agreement that was pushed and implemented by the influence of President Trump. I'm optimistic, but I think this kind of feeling is challenged with a lot of harsh reality, including, we have seen in Gaza that still Hamas is trying to show military power on the ground with the military shows that they organize every day. They do these exchanges, something that might not give proper answers to the inhabitants of Gaza. The inhabitants of Gaza, the 2.3 million Palestinians, are waiting for answers. How will they gain back their lives that was stolen from them during the war? And with this kind of military show, Hamas does not answer these questions. This show might be good for Hamas, but not for the Gazans. So who's going to build Gaza? Who's going to provide decent life for these people? Hamas is not capable.
Let me please, sorry for interrupting you there, but I would like to come to something that you have previously written, which I find very interesting, and it really follows up on what you've just said. You have written, this cycle will not end until Palestinians prioritize Israeli security, not as a favor, but out of their own national interest, and as Israelis prioritize Palestinian freedom and dignity, not as charity, but for their own future. After all the bloodshed in the past years, it seems as if the two sides are further apart than ever. Is that a fair assessment?
It is a very fair assessment. This is strategic thinking. If you start knowing the conflict in a precise way, if you have the DNA of this conflict, you know that it's as simple as this. Israelis are seeking for security. The lack of security, the fear inside the hearts of Israelis is real. It is not propaganda. What makes a majority of mainstream Israelis, 70% of the Israeli population, we can take aside those who are, for different ideological reasons, are against any kind of compromise with Palestinians. Nothing will change with this part of the Israeli society, but the bulk, the big majority of 70% of the Israelis would like to exit this conflict. And they don't mind having compromises on land with the Palestinians. They are pro-separation, pro the two states, but they are not confident that they will have security. So it's the lack of security is the real enemy of the Palestinians. And we need to fight this fear. Our enemy is not the Israelis. The real enemy for the Palestinians is the fear inside the hearts of the Israelis. At the same time, the Israelis need to be aware that Palestinians need freedom. The more they get security, the more they need to provide freedom for the Palestinians. An equation of more for more. Maybe we cannot go into a kamikaze jump, into a big step towards 100% of security for Israelis and 100% freedom for Palestinians. But at least if we start changing our thinking, if we change our leaders, because currently the political elite in Israel, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the regime led by President Abbas for 20 years without elections, these kind of leaders, they are keeping Palestinians and Israelis hostages of some kind of fear of the other side, some kind of mistrust towards the other side. So we Palestinians and Israelis need to change our way of thinking, and we need to change our leadership and adapt to a strategy of more for more, security against freedom, and build trust, maybe top down.
Sam, I'm afraid I have to interrupt you again. We're running out of time. I still want to ask you one question and would ask you for a very brief answer. You are someone who has brought about this change. You are now working towards peace. What has brought about that change in you? Very briefly, if you can.
Well, what brought this change on me is my knowledge of the Israelis. If we don't start seeing this conflict from the eyes of the other side, we will not be able to understand it. And if we don't understand it, we will continue to take wrong decisions. The more we know the other side, the more we feel the pain and the challenges of the other side, the more we are prepared to understand this conflict and take the right steps towards ending this conflict.
Thank you very much there. Samar Sinijlawi, Palestinian activist, talking to us from Jerusalem today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.